How would you describe the resistance that you faced in Iraq? And I'll preface it kind of with this. I've heard from a lot of guys in the interview series that essentially a lot of Iraqi soldiers didn't really want to fight. Like
Nah.
they took one look at an American, British, the Allied power. They saw a couple guys get destroyed, and they're like, "This is not for us." And they
Mm.
pretty much just put their guns down and went home. For
Yeah, I
you,
mean it's a shame, really. It's a shame when you think about that. They're people, they are people. They're not terrorists. They're soldiers and all conscripts, and none of them want to be there. These people are just people with families, and they have to be there because they're under a regime and they have no choice in the matter. So yeah, it's a bit like the Gulf War One. You know what happened there when they all just completely surrendered as soon as it started. You've got to feel for these people, So um, it's a really weird mindset with that one because that's something that I thought about a lot years after, even still today. When you're ordered to go somewhere to to do a job in a foreign country, and the resistance isn't actually resistance, but you do have resistance. We met resistance. There were pockets of resistance who were resistant, but probably because they just felt they had to be, and some of them probably wanted to be, but the majority probably didn't want to be there. And so it's changed days now because after that point where the regime fell, and then all these other groups, then these other militant groups showed up, and it was then terrorism is essentially. When you're dealing with extremists, terrorists, these are people who are very conditioned, very motivated, very driven by their culture, by their overarching goal, and they're very passionate about what they're fighting for. So you've got a different beast there. You've got resistance, you've got essentially like an enemy. And you will have a fight. They want to kill you. But back in the first stages of the Iraq War, it's not you've not got that. You don't have terrorism. You have essentially Saddam Hussein's then army who aren't in it because they want to be there.
right?
So you have to feel for these people, the people of Iraq, because I worked in Iraq after leaving the regiment. Some of the nicest people you'd ever meet are Iraqis. The good people. So yeah, it's a shame. But as far as the resistance goes, yeah, light resistance, pockets of small resistance, but nothing huge.
Number one, I agree with your assessment there, and I think people forget that. I think a lot of people forget that these are people who have children, they have
Yeah,
wives, and there is, and I think the important thing, the point you're making is there's a big difference between a uniformed soldier of the Iraqi army and, for
huge.
example, a member of ISIS.
Yeah.
One's a professional soldier who
Hmm.
is not trying to blow himself up for some asinine reason. And the other one will have no problem killing every innocent person around him if he gets the opportunity. And it's
Huge.
important people understand those are not the same
Mm.
things.
Not the same. And we're indoctrinated. I mean, when you're in the military, I mean, when you do basic training, you're taught to kill the enemy, kill or capture the enemy. So the word enemy is drilled in. You're conditioned to believe that these people are your enemy. And let's face it, when it all comes down to it, it's all politics. You're there because you're told to be there, because the army's told to be there. You're there to do your job, right? And everyone else is. So we're the enemy to them. When it's uniformed soldiers, we are the enemy because they're fighting for whatever their regime believes is right, and vice versa. So there is a huge difference. You can have empathy for a fellow soldier, but not with extreme terrorism. That's just not evil, fucking satanic sort of terrorist. That's a different case altogether. So there
Absolutely.
is huge contrast.
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out. Now, this was a question that you kind of teased a little earlier with the sniper story, which I know the audience will get a kick out of. In your team house interview,